Hey, this is Meridith Elliott, Powell, and you know what time it is. Well, maybe you don't. We're a little early this morning with some prior commitments, but Mark and I are ready to bring you Sales Logic. It's our favorite time of the week where we dive into the strategies that you need to sell more effectively. Mark, we got a good show today?
We have a good show. We're going to talk about how to gain market share in an overly crowded marketplace. We got a great question that goes along with it, a book and a lightning round. It's going to be a good show.
All right, let's do it.
Prospect with integrity, we will get customers who have integrity. Integrity is the foundation from which everything is built on.
You better understand value. But at the end of the day, sales is a relationship business. It is a people business. It is an emotional business.
This is Sales Logic.
This is Sales Logic. Again, the show where we dive into those strategies to help you sell more effectively. Now, before Mark reveals everything that we have on tap for you today, I like to tell you how the show works because we want you, the audience, to be a part of this show. Every week, we kick off with a question from you because we're doing real live sales right here on this show. We cover a hot topic, we recommend a book, and because we want you to leave with return on investment, we've got a lightning round. So, Mark, what is up for today?
Well, the topic is we're going to be talking about how to gain market share in an overly crowded marketplace. Hey, the lightning round this week we also got is going to dive into prospecting. So make sure you stick around for the full show. So anyway, hey, the question this week comes from Nathaniel in Nigeria. He writes, how do you gain market share in a highly competitive marketplace like Nigeria? Now, unfortunately, Nigeria, I haven't been to, and I don't know if you've been to Nigeria.
I have not.
Not been to, but anyway, but I did put the question into the Sales Logic brain, came back with some very astute thing. I'm going to just highlight two of them. One is differentiate your offering. In other words, and I'm going to talk about this too, because I got some great examples. It is a time that you can differentiate in terms of the value proposition that you share. It also talked about how do you enhance the customer experience. Really goes along very well because again, in a difficult market is when it's best for you to be able to go out there and grab market share. Don't think you can't.
Yeah. So, Mark, dive in. Give us some of those. Give us some of those examples.
Well, yeah. You know, one example is let's look at Nike shoes. Okay, everybody's got Nike clothing, Nike gear of one thing or another. Now, think about Nike shoes. How and where were they born? They were born on the track. They were track shoes initially. That's all Nike did was track shoes. And then Nike, and then they began to say, wait a minute, how do we gain market share? We begin to redefine our position in the marketplace and redefine really the category. So now you find Nike wear, Nike shoes, Nike everything. Why? Because they've expanded the category. They've expanded the usage. They've expanded the value proposition. How did they get there? By listening to the customer.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, if I could give you any advice, it would be to begin by going out there and not trying to sell a single thing. You need to listen to the customer. When the marketplace is crowded, you need to realize that what you're selling is not a product. In fact, you should think that way anyway, but particularly in a really crowded marketplace. I always like to use my example of Procter & Gamble and Ivory soap. I mean, when Procter & Gamble back in the 1800s was formed, the very first product they put on the market was soap. And you want to talk about a commodity and a crowded marketplace. Everybody in the 1800s was selling soap. Everybody's still selling soap today. But the way that Procter & Gamble found market share was they listened to customers. And what they listened for was what their competitors were not doing that customers wanted. And what it turned out was people were very frustrated that soap always sank to the bottom of a bathtub. And they shot air into a bar of soap, and Ivory soap was born, and it was tagged as soap that floats. So if you want to find opportunity in the marketplace, you need to figure out what your competitors aren't doing that your customers want.
Now stop and think about that, because you may be a salesperson, you're with a company, you say, hey, Mark and Meredith, I can't change the products we make. You're right. But you know what? You can probably adjust how the customer sees your product. How does the customer view what it is that you do? Now, think about this for a moment, because this is so key. This is so critical. Because go back to Nike. These were track shoes, and that's all they were being used for was for track. But then Phil Knight began to say, wait a minute, why can't they be worn for other occasions? Why can't they be worn? Because again, Phil Knight was looking at it and says, how do I expand this business proposition? That is what P&G was doing. They listened to the customer, and the customer said, yeah, the soap sinks. It sinks to the bottom of the tub. So listen, because the customer will take you to where they want to go, but only if you are willing to listen to them enough. Now, this means sometimes you've got to really be radical. You've got to innovate. You've got to be willing to, but it all comes back to listening to the customer and spending enough time with them. So I'm going to challenge everybody here. If you want to grab market share, maybe it's not just your customers you need to talk to, but maybe it's their customers. In other words, go downstream, because everybody buys something because they're going to use it for something else. Okay. Who is that something else? Who is that person? Get those people involved, and guess what? You're going to be able to reinvent how you are seen in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I'm wondering too, if you're currently selling in the marketplace and you're just trying to increase your market share, then go out and find your weakest competitor. I was just working with a client on this yesterday, and we built a list of 50 prospects, and it is a really crowded marketplace. They really sell a commodity. And when I was looking at the top 50, I said, who are those top 50 currently with? And it was a variety. And from that variety, we found the weakest competitor. And for us, that meant there was a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of corporate, very hard to get in touch with those things that the client would want, that competitor was least likely to fill. And so in order to gain market share, you need to go after your weakest competitor.
I like that, because you know who to go after, because you've talked to your existing customers and found out what's the value proposition they like. What are the things that they like the most? And if you can understand what it is that they like most, and then you can begin to say, hey, where's the gap? Where's the gap with other customers out there? This is especially key in a commodity-driven marketplace. Now, I hate the term commodity, because commodity is only if you allow your marketplace to define you as a commodity. I don't care what it is. You might be selling coal along with everybody else, but there's ways that you can distinguish yourself different and apart. That's your key. That's how you grab market share.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that, if you want to increase market share, pay attention to your competitors. Your competitors are going through a lot of challenge. I remember years ago when I was in the banking industry, we had the big three back then. You had Bank of America, you had First Union, and you had Wachovia. That's how old I am. Those were the big three back then. And when Wachovia and First Union decided to merge, it created opportunity for us. There was time to gain market share, because we all know that a merger is going to create pain for the customer. And when your competitor is putting an obstacle between success of their customers, that is the time to pounce to gain market share. So understand, you need to do a competitor analysis and understand what is going on with your competitors. And if there is something that you could offer that some of their customers might want.
That brings up a good point. How much information do you need to know about your competitors? Now, here's what I say, because again, when those banks merged, it created a tremendous opportunity for you and everybody else in the marketplace. I am never one to say focus on your competition, because then you get into a defensive mode. What I like is I do like understanding my competitors in terms of understanding how they behave, because in that banking merger, they changed limits, they changed terms, they changed a lot of things, and it put a lot of customer relationships at risk, creating opportunity for you. But now let's play this out in the bigger marketplace. Every customer, is buying from somebody. So understand who those competitors are and what are their fiscal years. What's their ownership model? What's their strategy? Where are they going in the marketplace? And you can find little weaknesses that you can exploit. So don't think for a moment that you have competitors that line up 100% to you. No, they don't. Your key is to find those differences and then use them accordingly.
Yeah, I would also add that we need to get back to one of Mark's favorite tools when you want to gain market share, and that is really understanding your ideal customer profile. Because when I think about taking customers from my competitors, which is in essence how you gain market share, is I've got to understand the people who would want what I'm offering that's more attractive to them than what the competitor is offering. I'll give you an example in terms of banking. When I went after First Union's customers, when First Union and Wachovia merged, they let go of anybody really with a business of less than $1 million in revenue. They were not interested in those customers anymore. That was my ideal profile. That's exactly who I wanted. So I didn't just go after First Union and Wachovia customers. I went after the customers that they had that were not their ideal profile, that were my ideal profile.
I love that example. And so many times there are those opportunities out there. Here's another one. I was on the phone yesterday. I was having a call with a founder. Great new business model. He's identified as ICP, and as we were going through it, he was identifying a second market. And he was talking to me about pricing. And I said, I'm going to run an idea past you. Don't think that you have to have the same pricing for both ICPs. Now, where I was going with this is because one ICP, very low end, very mass purchase type of frequency, they're going to be much more price sensitive than another one, which was a very professional high end. I said, you can have different pricing models for both of them. Now, okay, as a salesperson, you probably can't do that. You might not be able to, but think about this for a moment. There is definitely an opportunity out there for you to probably have more than one ICP. And as we talked through it, he said, yeah, I can set up this. We can have a completely different piece over here. Yes, salespeople, you can. Right now, in a highly competitive marketplace, is the time for you to segment your market even more. And that's what this gentleman was doing. He was literally just segmenting his market even more to see his customers in two different lights.
Yeah, I mean, you got to, in other words, if you think about everything that Mark and I are talking about this morning, if you want to gain market share in an overcrowded marketplace, you need a strategy. You really, really need to sit down and have a methodical plan of how you're going to go about doing it. And the things that we've talked about here today is, number one, identify what type of customer are you going after? Where are they currently? What's working in that? What isn't working in that? Where is your opportunity in the marketplace? Where is your differentiator? Ask yourself, why would a customer move from a relationship where they may not be happy, but at least they're comfortable, and come over and do business with you? And then you've got to write the value proposition and then understand it's going to take a while to move these customers. What is your plan for a full year drip on them to really begin to pull them over from where they're currently doing business?
I like what you're talking about. And now I'm going to share another idea here, and that is redefine what the category is. Redefine. GE was notorious for this when Jack Welch was CEO of the company. They would simply redefine the category because he said, we're only going to compete in categories where we're the number one or number two player out there. So I totally get that. But think about this for a moment. If you are playing and you feel you're a small player in a big category, it's going to be kind of a negative feeling. You're not going to feel too good. So maybe what you need to do is do like what Meridith did in the banking business, in the commercial banking business. Hey, she was part of major category, but she was redefining it to customers with less than $1 million in volume. So you as a salesperson, again, you may not have control. You may be a business owner and you do have control, but ask yourself this question. How am I defining my category that I'm competing in? Define it in a manner that you can get your arms wrapped around. Define it in a manner that you can create a distinguishable difference. Define it in a manner that you can be seen as the expert. And you're going to do a couple things. A, you're going to begin attracting better customers, but you are going to be seen as an expert because, again, you're dancing in a very tight, very small world. Now, don't think for a moment, oh, I'm going to lose business. No, you're not going to lose business. because you're actually going to become a more valuable player to your customers at every level.
Yeah. Good morning, Patrick Allman. There's somebody. If you are not following Patrick Allman, you should be following Patrick Allman. Okay. So this morning we're really talking about how do you take market share in an overcrowded marketplace. The one thing that we have not talked about is mindset around it. This is kind of an uphill battle. And in order to capitalize that, you've got to have a mindset that you are going to do it and you are going to accomplish. You got to have a positive mindset out there, and you got to celebrate every single step of the progress that you make. Deciding to come into a marketplace that is already full of the products and services that you offer, you've got to come in with the belief that there's a place for you in that marketplace, and you have opportunity. Keeping yourself upbeat, positive, and motivated is going to be really important.
Yeah, because you're going to feel a lot better about yourself. Oh, gee, I'm just one player in the world of merchandise, or no, I'm a key player in a very small segment. Hey, one thing we haven't talked about is price. Does price come into play in terms of gaining market share? And I'm glad that we have not talked about that at all, because it's easy for people to sit there and say, oh, I'm going to cut price. Let me tell you something. Cutting price is not the way you grab market share, because guess what? If it's highly competitive, others will cut price too. And guess what? You're going to wind up selling the same amount of volume and you're going to make less margin. So price does not factor into the equation. I don't know. Are there any do not do this that you see in the marketplace?
Yeah, I would definitely say don't. I mean, the thing that I hate about cutting price is you cheapen your product. We just assume that people are looking for a cheap price. And the only time they're looking for a cheap price is when price is all they think they are shopping for. When it's value, people will do that. We were talking about this yesterday because we were talking about, I was talking about being at our home at the beach. And at our home at the beach, there's a grocery store not far from us. And I don't have a clue what I pay at that grocery store. But I am not driving to the one that's 30 minutes beyond that one, because I don't care how much less expensive it was. I don't want to take one bit of time away where I could be on my bike or on a tennis racket. So again, or playing tennis. So if you understand your ideal customer profile, then build the value into it so that people will pay for it. You can move a customer on price, but I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast, but I'm going to. Back in banking, we had our chief credit officer used to call them price wars. And he would say, whenever we move somebody because we cut an interest rate, they were nothing more than a price war, and we would lose them as soon as our competitor cut the interest rate again. And he's right. Like, if you win a customer because you cut the price, then the moment your competitor cuts the price, that customer is gone. And you lost more than what you cut because you already skinnied your margin for the work you're delivering.
Oh, so well said, because price is not a sustainable competitive advantage, period. There will always be somebody who will come along and undercut you on price. And the person who buys you on price doesn't understand the value proposition. And think about this. The customers that you attract on price, they are high maintenance. They are really high maintenance. When I attract customers to my own business who really are premium customers, they're a delight to work with. It's the low price customers that create the struggle. And then what happens is you begin reframing the whole thought process in your mind. And as soon as you start playing the price game, and in fact, it's funny because I had this conversation earlier in the week talking with the VP of sales, and I'm doing a program for them on Monday. And I asked him, I said, how much leeway do you give your people in terms of price? He said, well, we give them too much. Okay, hold it right there. You just let the cat out of the bag. We have got to dial that back. We've got to dial it back because, again, you want to sell on the value, on the proposition you have for the customer, not on the price point, because otherwise you're going to get yourself into trouble. Now, let's come back and let's kind of put kind of a wrap on this. And we've been talking about ICP. your ideal customer profile. We've been talking about redefining your category. We've been talking about listening to your customers. Meridith gave a great example of P&G and Ivory soap. So spot on there with that. Finding new ways to apply your product. Never think for a moment, regardless of how competitive your marketplace is, that you can't go out and grab market share. Because as soon as you stop thinking about it, that you can't, I can't grab market share, all I can do is hold, you are in a defensive position and your mindset is going to go in the tank pretty quickly.
Well, I think, Mark, we have covered this subject from A to Z. I think we need to dive into the book and into the lightning round.
Hey, let's go. The lightning book, Insight Selling by Mike Schultz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you read the book?
Yes, I have. And I'll tell you what, I love Mike Schultz. I haven't talked to him now in probably about 5 or 6 years. In fact, it's funny, when I saw the book pop up, I got to call Mike. I got to find out what's going on. They examined, he and I believe it was Dorr was his co-author. They talked to so many buyers around the country. And the whole idea was they were examining top sellers. Yeah. They were examining top sellers. How do top sellers make it happen? And what I like about it is that they quickly realized that they position themselves, the seller positions themselves differently, so they can position the customer differently. Price does not enter into their conversation, into the book at all. And that's why I say that this book came out, I don't know, it's probably about 8 or 9 years ago.
Probably about 8 or 9 years old. Yeah,
still very applicable.
It is. And what I love about it is, for exactly what you just said, is basically they studied top sales professionals. And when you read this book, you understand at the end what top sales professionals do differently. The little nuances that consistently keep them at the top. To me, it's a roadmap, it's a strategy, it's a beautiful methodology on how to succeed in sales.
That's a perfect time to talk about Sales Logic Mastermind, because what is the mastermind? It is about top sellers hanging out together. And there's something magical. When you hang out with top people, you become a top person. In fact, it's very interesting. I used the Nike example this morning, up front in the show. Phil Knight, when he began running at the University of Oregon, he was not a great runner, but it's very interesting. If he had gone to any other school, he would have been an absolutely fantastic runner. But he was at the University of Oregon. Why? Because it elevated his game. He was surrounding himself with top elite runners. You want to surround. This is why Sales Logic Mastermind, you got to go out to saleslogicpodcast.com. You're going to see it. We want you to join us in the Sales Logic Mastermind deal. So anyway, hey, let's jump into the lightning round. Are you ready for the lightning round?
I am.
Top 10 ways to prospect effectively. Go.
Number 1, really, really get clear on your ideal customer profile. Before you ever choose your first prospect, define who that ideal prospect should be. 2, have a CRM system. Come on, people. If you don't have a CRM system, you're going to be stuck at the starting blocks. If you want to prospect effectively, build a succinct list. For me, it's a top 100. I just did it for a client yesterday, a top 50, but you need to build a succinct list and you need to focus. That means you're not going after shiny objects and squirrels outside the window. What does that mean? You're able to spend more time with better prospects. Yeah, take the time to do your research. Once you define who your prospects are, really learn the industry better than they do. And learn the individual. I had a prospect this week where I saw the industry, the business and so forth. There was some overlap. Popped the gentleman a note and boom, his response back to me was, I took the bait. Let's have the meeting. I love that. Number 7, set up a criteria for prospects. I have 9 criteria that my prospects need to meet in order for me to continue to follow up on them. Every time when I make an initial call, they have to meet 6 of the 9 in order for me to continue. Make sure that you are repetitious. Now, repetitious does not mean repeating the same message, but you're going to have to probably reach out to these people time and time and time again to get their attention. But each time, bring a different message. Yeah. Number 9, I would say that you need to, don't forget the marketing aspect of prospecting and work very, very hard at building your reputation, getting into the line of sight as a resource and as an expert for those people that you are going to be prospecting on.
And number 10, it's got to be marked on your calendar. It has to be a high priority. Prospecting is not something you do after you get done with everything else. Prospecting is one of your top priorities. Hey, with that, we want to say thank you for listening to Sales Logic this week. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. If something we've said has earned you a single dollar, consider telling a friend about our show, because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
all of this uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical.
All right. So Mark and I are off to hit the day. We will see you right back here next week with another episode of Sales Logic. Do not forget to go out to saleslogicpodcast.com, put your questions in there. Join us for the Sales Logic Mastermind. You want to blow your goals out next year? Let's get started right now. All right. We'll see you next week.